Hello and thanks for joining me again. As you can see, this morning I'm down at Llanddwyn Island. Down here for a couple of reasons. One is that there's a bunch of photographers due down here in a while, so there's a couple of people I'd like to say hello to. The other will become apparent very shortly. So I've got a couple of Ask Me Anythings to cover off in a moment, and funnily enough I had a comment in from a nice gentleman called Philip Culbertson, and he said, I really like your Ask Me Anything series, but why don't you do some while you're out on location? So Philip, this one's for you. I'm out on location. But before I get to my answers, I've got something that I want to have a chat with you about. It's something that I haven't covered at all in my vlogs up till now, and that's the equipment that I use, and by that I mean my stills equipment. And the camera that I was using was a Nikon D5500 crop sensor, and about 6 months ago I found that I was kind of reaching the limits of its capabilities. One of the things that I'm always really keen to do is to travel as light as possible. When you get to my age and you've got a gammy leg, the most important thing about your landscape photography is being able to get into the landscape. And so if I equipped myself with the finest photographic equipment, I would struggle to get it out to where it needs to be to capture the images I want to capture. So I thought about what my options were, and it came down to a choice of two completely new camera systems. And it was actually quite an easy win for the one that I chose. It came down to the Fuji X-T3, which, fantastic camera, absolutely no problem with the quality at all. The fact that it's a crop sensor, no issue for me whatsoever. I don't print big, so it doesn't matter. But it still would have required a couple of pretty chunky pieces of glass. And I really wanted to be able to walk around with one do-it-all lens, but that gives me the quality that I need. So the question was, what's going to do that for me? And the answer is the Olympus OMD EM1 Mark II with the 12-100 Olympus lens. This camera is built like a tank. It's weather sealed, really rugged, so it's going to be perfect for the sort of lack of respect I'm going to show it. And I actually struggled. I worked really hard over several months researching my buying decision. I really struggled to find much in the way of specifically landscape reviews of this camera and lens combination. And that surprised me, because when you're out backpacking, which is what a lot of landscape photographers tend to do a lot of, a sensible, not stupidly heavyweight, it's not light, I mean it still weighs a kilo with this glass, so a couple of pounds. The difference is though, that's all I need. I'm only going to have one lens. Hello. Oh dear, that'll be on the blooper reel.
Oh, sorry.
Anyway, as I was saying, I didn't want to have a whole bunch of glass. I love walking around with a camera either on a strap or on a belt pouch, so that when I see some interesting light and I'm halfway up Penarol Wen, I can go click and not be thinking, oh, if only I had my long lens on. Well, I'll take my backpack off, I'll get it all out, I'll get it set up. Well, I might as well set the tripod up while I'm at it. The other thing about this particular camera is the image stabilization system is legendary. I took an image last night in my room as I was playing around with it, and I've only had it a day. A 4-second handheld image, pin sharp. I couldn't believe it. So I'm hopeful that the images that I used to grab with my old camera that were tidy compositions, but technically not very good, that I'll be actually able to get something that I can be a bit more proud of. So I've got a couple of thank yous about the purchase of this camera before I go any further. The first thank you is to the lovely Mrs. G, because she was good enough to allow me to blow a huge wad on this particular camera system. So thank you, the lovely Mrs. G. The second thank you are to the people that sold me this camera. I went to a lovely little family-run business in Colwyn Bay called Cambrian Photography. If you're anywhere near North Wales and you want any sort of photographic equipment and service with a smile and all sorts of help, I highly recommend them. But let me be a bit more specific than that. It's easy to say, oh yeah, they're nice people, shop there. When I got the sealed Olympus box home yesterday morning, there was no battery in it. I rang the shop and said, unfortunately, there's no battery in my box. What they said was, we are really sorry about that, Mr. Griffiths. We know you've driven an hour to come and pick it up specially. Don't worry, we'll send someone round with it. Oh, and by the way, we'll throw in a freebie by way of apology. Seriously? I mean, you're never going to get anything like that sort of customer service from your average camera shop. So thank you, Cambrian Photography, and you have my very strong recommendation. So, I've got a new camera system. I haven't taken any images apart from that one handheld test image, except that I was here a bit earlier on for sunrise. There wasn't one, but I did put it on a tripod and take the classic photograph of Twr Mawr at Llanddwyn Island. And that was my second reason for coming here today. Very specifically, what I was after was the first image with this camera system to be my local iconic shot. Now, unfortunately, I haven't picked the best conditions to take my new camera out for its inaugural test shot. I would have been up on the headland for the classic Llanddwyn Island composition, the one that you may have seen me capture when I was here back in August. On that day, I was taking advantage of the sunrise and the Llyn Peninsula over on the far side there and making the most of those mountains in addition to Twr Mawr. No chance of doing that today. You can barely see the mainland. So my composition is slightly lower down to take advantage of the pathway as the leading line, and then to try and pull some drama out of the sky in post. The image itself I expect to be really straightforward. I'm all set up here with my composition. I'm shooting at f11, the landscape photographer's standard aperture. It's going to give me a shutter speed of approximately half a second, which is no problem at all. I've got my ISO set on the low setting, which on this camera is actually 64. So here we go, the very first landscape shot with my new camera. Let's see how it turns out. Bingo. Let's have a cup of coffee and answer a couple of questions, and then hopefully my fellow photographers should pitch up and we'll have a big chin wag. I'll also see if I can test out the stabilization on this and get a few handhelds on the way home, which, as you know, is something I'm keen to do. Let's have some questions. First question from David Williams again. Thank you, David. David often sends questions in and I'm very grateful for that because I really enjoy talking about photography. David says, can you tell me more about how you use your drone? Well, the short answer is yes, I absolutely can, but I would, if I may, like to do that on a separate video because I think it warrants a short video in itself. So bear with me, David. I'll get that done for you as soon as I can. Second question from Carrie Liana, who is a brand new vlogger. She's based in Hawaii, of all places. Jealous much. She's done one vlog so far. Check out her channel. It's an interesting vlog and she apologises for no audio, but the B-roll that she gets is really nice and be interesting to see what she makes of her channel. Caroliana asks, what are 3 photography goals that you'd like to accomplish in 2019? That's a really good question. Okay, so the first two I've already accomplished because I've been thinking about it since way before New Year. Get a new really top quality camera system for those super sharp images, and get a system that's really lightweight and you only have to have one lens. So that's all that nicely taken care of. The third one actually relates to where I am. There's an image of the tower that's available in August of the Milky Way coming straight out of it almost vertically. And at that time of year, the galactic core is about 5 degrees above the horizon. At 3 o'clock in the morning, on pretty much every morning where there's no cloud cover, at that time of year, there'll be a row of photographers, 20 or 30 of them, up on the hilltop there. I didn't come down here last year, partly because my equipment wasn't up to it, but I'm determined to prove that I can do that with a Micro Four Thirds, and the people that say you need a full frame and low noise, well, we'll see how I get on. It'll be a multiple image stack, of course, but I'm determined to prove you can pull it off with a Micro Four Thirds. Last question from Roger Steele, and thank you very much, Roger, for writing in. Are you able to describe how you match up your remote voice recording and your video recordings so accurately? It's actually a really easy process, Roger. What I do is, when I sit down, I switch the camera on, switch the voice recorder on, I simply clap my hands. What that does is it creates a spike in the audio waveform, and I match that up with the video of where my hands are coming together, lock those two tracks together, and everything's synchronized. And then I can chop the track up and edit it as necessary going forwards, and the audio stays synced. So that's how it's done. So it's coming back to this. Like I said, I haven't really talked about gear at all. And because I couldn't really find much about specifically landscape photography with this camera, but I found plenty of quite opinionated forum pieces saying that Micro Four Thirds is utterly dreadful for landscapes. So you might think, what are you thinking? All you do is landscapes. Well, I hope I've made the right decision. Time will tell. From what I've seen so far, I'm very pleased with it. But what I am going to be doing is talking much more specifically about Micro Four Thirds as a landscape photography tool. Mostly because I'm an evangelist for your equipment being as portable as possible so that you can get out in the landscape. But also because I answered a question in my last Ask Me Anything, recommending to somebody that yes, a Micro Four Thirds system is a good way to get into landscape photography. So I've now put my money where my mouth is. I need to prove that I wasn't talking rubbish. Hopefully I'll do that. I'll be reviewing all sorts of aspects of how this works. Another thing that I have done is I've started putting all the images that make it into my vlogs onto the vlog page on my website. So there'll always be a link in the description to that page where you can have a look at the images in full size, because on the video it doesn't do them justice. And going forwards, if anybody wants a raw file from future vlogs that I make with this, contact me and ask. I'll be quite happy to share them. When I was doing my research, I found some raw files, and that actually was what swayed it for me, because that's really the only way you can tell whether or not you're going to get the quality out of the camera. So I think that's plenty for this one. Thank you ever so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And next time out, I'll be doing a proper landscape photography vlog with lots of photography. So if you haven't done it yet, why not subscribe now and join me next time. Cheers.